All right, guys, welcome back. And we got a quick one for you today, but we're looking at baptism's history. So, the catechumenate, or the process of preparing yourself scripturally for baptism, begins in the 100s to the 200s. So, at this point, a person who had a desire to join would search out a believer already and ask them to sponsor them. These people would be referred to as parents for the new believer and would help them along their catechumenate period. So they would help them with their studies and try to teach them, pieces of the faith. This is also important during this time period because if you remember, the 100s and 200s were periods of persecution. So you would need kind of like a person to help you get in, if you will. The catechumenate and the catechumen, who's the person who's studying, would need to be vouched for by the sponsor. The catechumenate period would last up to 2 to 3 years and would culminate in the season of Lent. Easter, at this point, in the 100s to 200s, was the only day that baptism was performed. So, what did this Easter vigil look like? Well, it's an interesting little type of thing, is that you would go into this huge room, right? And there would be this ritual bathing, this bathhouse where men and women would be separated in different rooms. First, they would face west, where the sun would set, and they would denounce Satan, and then they would face to the east and shout out their acceptance or their willingness to accept Christ into their life. They'd go into another room. There would be a pool, which would be modeled after the Roman bathhouses. They take off their clothes and that they entered with, and then they would be anointed with oil all over those bodies. Getting a little freaky-deaky. All right? A bishop would then submerge the candidates 3 times into the water, full dunk, full exposure. All right? And after they were immersed, they were once again anointed with oil, this time on their forehead where Christ was anointed, and be led into the final room where they would celebrate Eucharist together. After the Easter Vigil was over, Christians would continue their education with the Christian community in a period called mystagogia. So even after Easter was over, there would be time where they would continue to study the Scriptures and start to kind of form their own opinions on different things. This helped to keep the baptism rite continuing for them, just as we continue the baptism rite with First Holy Communion around the age of 6 or 7 or 8, and final confirmation around the age of 12, to 16. As the community grew, there became just far too many Christians, and in the Dark Ages, bishops gave the priests power to baptize. But now the process was to allow the priest to baptize with water and then wait for the bishop to get around into the community and confirm the baptism with oil. So really, the sacrament of confirmation comes just out of necessity. There was just too many people who had a desire to join. Now, so during the Dark Ages, baptism and confirmation split and become 2 distinct sacraments. Infant baptism becomes the norm, because obviously at this point, after the fall of the Roman Empire, you have a lot of kids who are dying, a very, very high infant mortality rate, well above 1 out of 2 kids die after birth, unfortunately. And so people were worried, they were scared, as we talked about in the second quarter, and they felt like if they had that peace of mind that their child was going to heaven, that it could help them to survive. So how does this compare to baptism today? Well, that, my friends, is something that we will talk a little bit about tomorrow. So have a great evening, and I'll see you tomorrow, and we will continue along our journey.